All right, the silence descends. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to this afternoon's event. My name is James Robson. I'm the Victor and William Fung Director of the Harvard Asia Center. I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. On behalf of everyone at the Asia Center, I'd like to welcome you to the 17th Tsai Lecture. I'd like to particularly thank this gentleman up here, being the paparazzi, Tenzin Nodop, for everything he did to make this event possible today. He did a tremendous amount of work to arrange it, so thank you, Tenzin. Yeah. I'd like to first point out that today's talk is being videotaped, but we ask you to please refrain from doing any live streaming or any other audio or video recording of the event. So thanks for your cooperation. There will be a Q&A period following the talk, and there will also be a reception in the concourse outside of this room following the event. So please join us out there to continue the conversation over some food and drink if you have some time to stay around. So the Tsai Lecture, which is the Asia Center's distinguished annual lecture, was established in the year 2000 with a generous endowment from Felix Tsai. It allows the Asia Center to bring to Harvard notable leaders in academia, government, and business, as well as other professions. The annual lecture is open to the public, and it offers perspectives from a range of disciplines and from different regions in Asia. Past speakers have included the late Surin Pitsuwan, the former Secretary General of ASEAN, the Pritzker Prize-winning architect and humanitarian Shigeru Ban, internationally renowned human rights lawyer and advocate Asma Jahangir, the award-winning author Amitav Ghosh, Dr. Jim Yong Kim, the former head of the World Bank, the Honorable Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, the Honorable Carolyn Kennedy, and the Honorable Kathleen Stevens, who delivered the 15th Tsai Lecture in 2019. The Nobel Peace Prize-winning laureate Maria Ressa delivered the most recent 16th Tsai Lecture in 2022. Now, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce the 17th Tsai Lecturer, Lobsang Sangay. I want to put honorable in front of that as well, like all those other honorables. I see it as less of a title of an office and more of a statement of character. He's no stranger to Harvard or the Asia Center. And Lobsang Sangay is currently a senior visiting fellow at the East Asian Legal Studies program at the Harvard Law School. During his tenure at the Harvard Law School in the fall of 2022, he taught a class on China and Tibet and is presently teaching a reading group on Tibet at the Harvard Kennedy School. Lobsang Sangay served as a democratically elected Sikyong, or often translated as president, of the Central Tibetan Administration, serving 2 consecutive terms from 2011 to 2021. He began his career in public service in 1988 as the vice president of the Regional Tibetan Youth Congress in Delhi, and Lobsang completed his BA and LLB from Delhi University. He did his LLM in 1995 and SJD in 2004 from the Harvard Law School and received the Yong K. Kim 95 Memorial Prize for Excellence in a Dissertation and Contributions to the Understanding of East Asia at the Harvard Law School. While at Harvard, akin to Track 3 diplomacy, he organized 7 rounds of meetings and conferences between Tibetan, Western, and Chinese scholars. Most notably, in 2003, he organized the first ever meeting between His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and 25 Chinese scholars and students, which was the same year, which happened on September 16th, 2003, that the Harvard Asia Center also hosted a public talk in Sanders Theater by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. In 2008, Lobsang Sangay testified before the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Asian and Pacific Affairs regarding the crisis in Tibet. Lobsang has become known for his deft handling of difficult diplomatic issues, which obviously come with certain dangers, challenges, and pressures. Lobsang, for example, once related how he had received an email by a reporter from Time magazine who wanted to conduct an interview with him in Dharamsala. He graciously agreed to the journalist's offer, accepted the journalist's offer, but then a few days later received another email that said she wanted to share the questions she planned to ask him and included them in an attachment to the message. Initially, he thought this was a particularly kind gesture by the reporter, but then he remembered that he was living in a rarefied political time that included all manner of surveillance and other things, and he began to become a bit suspicious. Therefore, before opening the attachment, he wrote back to the reporter, asking if she in fact had sent the email to him. She responded that she had not. She then did some sleuth work and found that it had been sent by a different source, with the attachments being malware that would have spied on him or destroyed his computer. Being raised as a good Buddhist, Lobsang was all too familiar with one of the fundamental Buddhist teachings, namely that of non-attachment, whereby the Buddhists taught that attachments were one of the cardinal sins. Hence the joke that says, when you send an email to the Buddha, he will reply, "No attachments, please." Whoever said that Buddhist doctrinal teachings don't have their practical implications? Lobsang Sangye has, however, not remained detached from engaging with critical and difficult issues and discussions. He's gone on to produce a number of important reports that have been disseminated through the human rights organizations and the mainstream media. He was a researcher for the formative report, Tibet, Human Rights and the Rule of Law, published by the International Commission of Jurists in Geneva and Switzerland in 2008. He also published Legal Autonomy of Tibet, a Tibetan Lawyer's Perspective, in the Journal of East Asian and International Law, and Education Rights for Tibetans in Tibet and India. He also published an article entitled Tibet, The Exile's Journey, that was published in the Journal of Democracy in 2004. He was selected as one of the 24 young leaders of Asia by the Asia Society in 2006, and he's spoken at many international conferences such as the Forum 2000, the Halifax Security Forum, and the Oxford Union. He's written numerous op-ed pieces in major newspapers, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and he's appeared on many international TV networks like the BBC and CNN, and has been profiled in the New York Times, the BBC, and CNN, among other news media. Lobsang Sangye was awarded the gold medal for outstanding contributions to public discourse by the College Historical Society at the Trinity College in Dublin in 2014, and the Salisbury University Presidential Medal for Distinguished Community Leadership in 2015. He has visited various capitals and parliaments around the world, and it played an important role in the passage of the Tibet Policy and Support Act of 2020, signed by the United States government, which outlines U.S. policy on Tibet that requires the State Department to discuss U.S. efforts to promote the human rights of the Tibetan people, and it stipulates it is official United States policy that the succession of Tibetan leaders, including that of the Dalai Lama, be left solely to Tibetan Buddhists for them to decide. The Act also provides other forms of support for non-governmental organizations to assist Tibetan communities. I'm sure we will learn much more about Lobsang Sangye's life between Dharamsala and the halls of political power in his talk today. Therefore, the Asia Center is deeply honored that Lobsang accepted our invitation to deliver today's talk. So please join me in welcoming Lobsang Sangye for today's 17th Tsai lecture entitled Journey of an Exiled Tibetan Leader from Harvard to Dharamsala. Lobsang, please.
I met Professor James a few days ago before my talk, and I confided to him that if nothing else, if you could hype my bio, so that even if my speech won't be interesting, at least from the bio I look good. So he agreed because he has been to Dharamsala for 7 months. So I said, if you have some sympathy, you know, if you owe something to us, at least hype my bio. So thank you for that. And also it's true, the Buddha's teaching is still relevant. Whenever you receive an email from a suspicious source, don't open your attachment. Non-attachment is still relevant. As a matter of fact, once, it was my early days in my administration, I sent an email to only 3 people about my trip to Washington, D.C. What we should do, who should try to meet, and Secretary of State and all that. And then 7 days later, it got leaked. And how did it happen? So my computer was compromised. And once, I was taking a flight from, Delhi to Dharamsala. So I opened my phone. As I looked at it, I could see my contact disappearing right in front of my eyes. So all disappeared. So attachment, please be careful. It's a great honor and privilege. Actually, I can't believe I'm standing here because all my professors, Laoshis, are here. I feel like I'm giving my dissertation exam again, you know. I'm a bit anxious as to what would happen. And then it's very courageous and noble on the part of Asia Center, Professor James and the staff of Asia Center to, you know, give me this very prestigious platform, you know, 17th Thai lecture. And then because of which so many Tibetans are proud, and then they have come all the way from New York and Vermont and Connecticut, you know. So it shows that your decision, Asia the Center's decision, is much appreciated. And Tenzin Gyatso has been architect on this. Actually, we plan to do it on March 10th, which is the 64th the anniversary of our National Uprising Day. But it happens to be on Friday, which is the beginning of our spring break. So hardly there won't be anyone. You know, we could have an occasion, but we won't have an audience like today. So we decided to do it today, and today happens to be Wednesday. White Wednesday is very good in the context of Tibetan culture, because you know it's very auspicious as far as His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birth signs are concerned. So that's why I'm wearing green belt. Green also symbolizes not just green environmental sense, but also about His Holiness. So I'm trying to dedicate this, you know, talk to all the Tibetans, you know, and especially to our leadership, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And today I'm going to talk about, you know, first how I ran for position, you know, then election, and how Tibetan administration is and how it's run. And then one of the most crucial issues is the dialogue with the Chinese government. If there's any hope, what happened, whether there's a prospect of solution or not. And then, you know, part of my leadership, if there's any theme today, it will be leadership, crisis, criticism, and compassion-based courage. So if you're a leader, crisis and criticisms are bound to happen. As we say in Buddhism, right? Impermanence and emptiness are two sides of the same coin. Similarly, leadership and crisis and criticisms are two sides of the same coin. So that's what I'll try to share. In that context, I'll explain to you about the self-immolations that took place in Tibet and how difficult it was as a leader to make a decision or a policy statement. And then my visit to Washington, D.C., part disappointment, part appreciated because the Congress would meet with you, but not the executive. And then the travel around the world with similar experience. And then finally I'll go get back to Washington, D.C., where finally we managed to pass the Tibetan Policy Support Act, and how important, relevant the issue of Tibet even is. So that, you know, Policy Act, the law, makes it very clear. So that will be the summary of my presentation. And then, you know, I have prepared 70-some photographs. So I have 45 minutes to finish. So I'll run like anything. So as a Tibetan who is from mountains, I should have stamina. I hope you will, you know, bear with me. So first slide, Tashidelek, means good wishes in Tibetan. Now, this is the debate of three candidates in 2011. So on the right-hand side of me is Tenzin Tedongla, former Prime Minister. On the left side is Tashi Wongdilla, the most seasoned, experienced minister in the Tibetan cabinet. And we had other candidates in the preliminary round as well. Now, can you imagine, I was the youngest, least experienced, never worked in administration, you know, and never worked even as a member of parliament or cabinet, and I decided to run for the highest position in the Tibetan government exile. Partly because when I was studying at Harvard, all my professors told me that you can do it. Anything you aim for, you can do it. So I said, what the heck, I'll do it, you know. Then I landed up in the debate. Then I realized these are very senior people. I have tremendous respect for both of them. And, you know, there's a long story. We had a very friendly, good debate. Then here we are. Tibetans are very excited to vote, you know. They have this green book. Now, I think it's only in the Tibetan community where you must pay your freedom tax. Then only you get to vote. You don't pay, you don't get to vote, right? So Tibetans have lined up, and one monk is thinking as to who to vote for. And like two women, they are so enthusiastic. They brought their toddlers in hand and they're praying before they're voting. I hope they're praying for my success. And then, they voted. And here I was, this is a later photograph, I was criticized during election, bringing the American system of election to the Tibetan society. My goodness, look at him. He's shaking hands with people, kissing babies. That's scandalous. Tibetan society, we should not do that. If we are fighting for Tibet leaders, trying to elect a leader of freedom struggle, and, they get, people vote for you, you should not go asking for votes. And here's a bit of a negative campaign. This at the back, there are my posters. It was pasted on the walls of Dharamsala, and people wrote Nyamnyung me, means no experience. You can see. English also, yeah. This guy has no experience, and there's a big no over there, and there's a sad face over there. So some people were clearly very sad that I was running for it, But I gave a smile, anyways. And this is the remote village of Ladakh. Look at these people, so committed. It's so cold outside, And then they are voting. And if you're wondering how safe our voting booths are, here they have a hand in a sunny day. They're all outside, they're checking their green book, and then you go in. Very Buddhist way of checking your green book and going in and voting. And look at this. Now, if anyone of you suspect that there might be some manipulation in ballot boxes, we don't, because look at these volunteers. They're carrying ballot boxes at minus 30 degrees Celsius. So if they're that committed to carry ballot boxes, I think we should, be assured that ballot boxes are safe. No frauds at all, yes. Look at frozen lake, look at permafrost, and they're so committed. And then, finally, I got elected, and His Holiness Dalai Lama kindly, came to bless the occasion on my inauguration day. And this is what His Holiness said. This is a historic line. Today, my long cherished goal is realized. The power given to me by Sikyong Tara Rinpoche, I'm handing over to Sikyong Lobsang Sengye. No pressure, So 600 years of history of the institution of Dalai Lama being both the spiritual leader and the political leader was devolved. And church and the state was separated. And here I was given the responsibility. And then it just happened to be on Monday. That's when His Holiness, because next day His Holiness was leaving. So it was August 8th, right? So the oath I took on August 8th, and I said, why not do it at 9 a.m., 9 minutes and 9 seconds? So in Chinese, it translates as Papa, Cho, 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 So it's like prosperity, prosperity, longevity, longevity, right? So Communist Party of China cannot criticize me, right? So that's how it became popular. But then some Tibetans said, my goodness, you are, taking the oath as the leader of a Tibetan movement. How can you schedule it as per Chinese calendar, But I think I did last, for 10 years, so longevity worked. And our budget doubled, so prosperity also worked in retrospect. So, and, that occasion makes it very clear. As far as Tibetans are concerned, democracy is a gift from His Holiness Dalai Lama. At every crucial stage when power has to be devolved, in 1960 to have the first parliament, in 63 to have a constitution with the provision to impeach the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama insisted that there has to be provision to impeach me. And in 1970s to elect a minority representative, and in 1990 expanded the parliament, and then in 2001 direct election of Khalil Tribo Prime Minister. All this happened because His Holiness Dalai Lama insisted, right? So that's why we always say that democracy for Tibetan people never fought, and it was given as a gift to Tibetan people. But then, cartoon says, whenever parliament is in stalemate, whenever they come to a difficult decision, they say, we have to ask Dalai Lama. He has already devolved, but we insist that we ask Dalai Lama. So that's why he said the democracy was a gift. You can't return the gift, And then, this another example, we had a Tibetan referendum. So Tibetans were given a choice to choose independence, autonomy, or self-determination. And His Holiness Dalai Lama said, now you all should choose what you want to do. And you decide. The Tibetans said, no, you decide. And I said, no, you decide. And actually, we have decided that you decide. Actually, it happened. What happened? There were 3 choices, but they put a 4th provision, saying, whatever Dalai Lama decides, we will listen. So that was the outcome of the referendum, you know. So the democracy is truly a gift from His Holiness Dalai Lama. That's precisely the reason why he didn't want Tibetan community and the movement to rely only on an individual. He wanted to devolve his authority, separate the church and the state, and introduce democracy. And that's why, you know, the election of Sikong and the power devolution took place. So this is the buildings of Tibetan Secretariat or government exile. In fact, over 7 years, I demolished most of them or built new ones. All these were brand new. And then, you know, so it looks nice over 10 years. But over 7 years, during the construction, I was criticized right, left, and center by almost everybody because they have to walk on the porthole. It was so noisy. It was so dusty. After 7 years, when everything came out all right, they said, yeah, it's okay. That's all I got, right? But then as I was walking into this building, you know, Professor Bill Kirby was in charge in building this building, right? So I suggested to him, why did you make the top round? Because you're losing a lot of space. You know, if you make it square, you know, you get a lot of space. And Bill Kirby said, you don't have aesthetic taste, you know, so leave it to architect. Now I prove him wrong because all my buildings are square, maximum space, and aesthetic taste with Tibetan touch, windows and doors. Right? It looks nice, right? Especially this one looks nice, you know. So if Bill Kirby is here, please tell him that, you know, architecturally, I'm, you know, right. This is my building. This not my building. Actually, this is the building of the Cabinet Secretariat. And this is the Parliament. Now, our Parliament is really rigorous. I don't want to say Wild West, but any of the 45 members of Parliament can ask any number of questions. For example, we have 2 sessions, one in the March, one in the September, for 10 days or 12 days, 14 days. Once I had to answer more than 200 plus questions over 3 days, right then and there. They ask you questions, you have to answer right then and there. So 0 hour of, you know, House of Commons in, you know, London is a child's play. And that record was broken by my the colleague of Home Minister. She had to answer 300 plus questions over 5 days. Can you imagine? But how do you answer questions if they ask immediately? Smartphone helps. And then parliamentarians were quite naughty. They banned, you know, phones from inside Parliament building. So now the executive ministers, they can't look at phones. But then I said, for national security, I have to carry my phone. So I was allowed. Right? So I cheated a bit anyways. And now this is how the Tibetan government in exile is. You know. So it functions like any other government. We have Department of Religion and Culture, all the monasteries and nunneries, 30,000 plus monks and nuns, you know, were overseen by, rather coordinated by Department of Religion and Culture. Ministry of Home has all the settlements all over India, Nepal, and Bhutan, and old age homes, all has to be taken care of. Finance takes care of a budget, fundraising. So 40 plus, you know, 40 to 45 million dollars was the budget. In fact, during my term, we doubled the budget, and we managed to also save quite a bit at the end. Education department has primary, middle, and, you know, senior secondary or high schools, and then run for free for most of the Tibetan children or bare minimum fees. And then we also provide scholarships for children to go to college. And again, the education result over 10 years improved, you know, quite a lot. In fact, our literacy rate is 92 or 93%, far better than any of the Southeast Asian countries, or if you compare any of the refugee communities in this world, I think our literacy rate is very high. And economically also very hardworking and self-dependent. Security, you know, mainly His Holiness security and information from inside Tibet. And information and international relations, I'll come to that. And health department also pretty good. During COVID, we handled it very good. So over 10 years, all the departments, you know, perform pretty well. So if you have any specific questions as for the details, please ask me. I'm happy to share with you. Now, under the Department of International Relations and Information, So these are the offices we have. They act as semi-embassies. New Delhi, Washington, D.C., Geneva, Tokyo, London, Brussels, Canberra, Paris, Moscow, Pretoria, Kathmandu, Taipei, and Sao Paulo in Brazil. So we have anywhere from 3 to 7 staff members. Delhi, we have more than 30. That's the largest. So it functions like any other government, and quite effectively so. In fact, among all the government exiles, we are proud to say that Tibetan administration is the most efficient and functioning one. Now I'll come to a serious aspect of the Tibet issue as far as dialogue is concerned, solution for Tibet issue is concerned. We all know after the occupation of Tibet, pre-Cultural Revolution, during Cultural Revolution, Tibetans suffered a lot. But then the Chinese leader, Hu Yaobang, who was open-minded, liberal, initiated a lot of the reforms inside Tibet. He visited Tibet, and he really wanted to engage in dialogue. And at that time, Chinese paramount leader Deng Xiaoping said, other than independence, anything can be discussed. So in that, under that, what we call slogan or principle, initiatives were made. And His Holiness Dalai Lama's brother, this is a picture of Hu Yaobang, Hu Jintao, who became the Party Secretary General of Tibet Autonomous Region, and then later President of China, and Wen Jiabao, I was told, I think, became Premier of China. And then, this is His Holiness Dalai Lama's elder brother, Gyaltsab Thundup, and Shi Dongshun was the father of Xi Jinping. So Shi Dongshun knew His Holiness Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama, and he knew about Tibet issue quite well. So when in late 70s and 80s, when there was a prospect for dialogue, he played an important role. And you can clearly see how close Shi Dongshun, Xi Jinping's father, and Panchen Lama was. It looks like this is maybe a Tibetan New Year event where Xi Jinping's family visited Panchen Lama's family. You can clearly see Panchen Lama's brother, Xi Jinping, is the second one, and then Panchen Lama himself, Xi Jinping's wife, and then one sitting is Panchen Lama's father, Xi Jinping's father, Shi Dongshun, and Yi Qianyin, one of the top marshal general, and Panchen Lama's mother. So they were very close. When Panchen Lama passed away, or died, Shi Dongshun, Xi Jinping's father, actually wrote the official obituary. It's available now. So if you read the obituary, you can clearly see how close they were. But unfortunately, as far as Tibet issue is concerned, father was very liberal, but the son is yet to prove like his father. Let me put it politely. Now, as far as dialogue is concerned, during Hu Jintao's time, primarily started in Cheng Zemin's time, during Hu Jintao's time, two envoys of the Dalai Lama, Gyaltsab Rinpoche and Keza Gyaltsab, went to China officially 9 times. So they have 9 rounds of dialogue. They did have discussions, and one unofficially, and met with the Chinese counterpart. The one in the middle is the vice chairman of National People's Consultative Conference, Tu Qingling, and then on the extreme left is he was the vice minister of Tu Wenchun. Yes, he was the vice minister who actually was a hardliner. So from 2002 to 2009 and 10, so they had 9 rounds of dialogues. So they had a lot of engagements. But then ultimately, there was no breakthrough per se. So when I got elected in 2011, I visited Dharamsala before I took the oath in May of 2011. So 2 of the envoys came to me and asked me, and what should I do, whether they should continue with the dialogue. And I said, very much so. And they also wanted to do it. And I said, please, whatever you have to do, we must have this dialogue and continue to have this dialogue. Because when I was here at Harvard for 16 years, my main effort was track 3 diplomacy, as James said. We organized 7 major conferences, including meeting between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his visit to Sanders Theatre at the law school. Professor Bill Alford moderated it. And track 3 diplomacy was going on quite good. In fact, the Vice Minister of United Front also visited. Top-level scholars came. So I thought I could contribute something towards dialogue because, for 16 years I frequented Harvard Asia Center, Yenching Center, Fairbanks Center, and East Asian Legal Studies. I didn't go to Kennedy School and Business School and Health School and Education School, which I regretted because during my administration, I realized when I looked at the health file, I said, I should have gone to health department, When I had to do fundraising, I said, why didn't I go to business school, right? So, but then I devoted all my time, and religion and culture, I took a class, comparative class with, Charlie, but other than that, I didn't visit much to divinity school. So that was my regret. But I invested all my eggs in one basket on dialogue, track 3 diplomacy. This is where I could contribute. So I met them in May, and they said they wanted to continue, and I said, very much so. When I took the oath in August of 2011, again, I met 2 of them formally, and they made all the presentation as to what has transpired in 9 rounds of dialogue, everything. And then, yes, I said, please go ahead. We must have this dialogue. We must continue to have this dialogue. And they tried their level best. And at last stage, they were trying to contact their interlocutor or the contact in Hong Kong who was passing on the message to the United Front. Then they were meeting. And then they were saying, well, the contact in Hong Kong is not responding positively because Beijing is not responding positively. But I insisted, please try again. At the end, 2 of them wanted to go to Hong Kong and meet the interlocutor, and I said, please, very much so. Finally, Khesan Gyaltsela went, and he came back with a report, a negative report. So when I actually took over June of 2012, situation in Tibet was very grim. And then, they resigned. So as you might know, as per His Holiness' vision, our policy still is to seek genuine autonomy within the framework of Chinese constitution and within China. That's called middle way policy. Because Deng Xiaoping said, other than independence, anything can be discussed. So His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetan leadership believed that and then had 9 rounds of dialogue thinking we will get some kind of genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people. But after 9 attempts, in fact, they submitted a document called Memorandum of Genuine Autonomy, listing everything, what constitutes genuine autonomy. And Chinese government, especially Tu Weishun, was not happy. He just said this is semi-independence, hidden independence. He had a press conference and dismissed it. And then the envoy submitted another document called, clarification or statement on the memorandum. That was also rejected. So that's when I went. So when I took over, situation inside Tibet was very grim. It was very, very tense, and self-immolation started happening. And 2 envoys said, now we tried everything possible. It's not working, and we resign. So they resigned. Now imagine, I invested all my eggs in one basket, dialogue, here at Harvard. I didn't go to business school or other schools, trying to get other skills. And the dialogue went just out the door in my very few months of my term. Now, what would you do, right? Now, the crisis happened. Self-immolation in Tibet. Tibetans started burning themselves. So there was one in 2009. So March of 2011 on, so I was getting elected, preliminary round was going on, I took over, 12 self-immolation happened. Now in 2012, 85 self-immolation happened, meaning there was one every 4 days. So it was very emotionally heart-wrenching in the Tibetan community. Inside Tibet and outside Tibet, our supporters and friends everywhere, they were writing and they were commenting about it, where they were like, mixed feelings as to how to respond to this. Now, Tibetan people, obviously, you get emotional. And then they're like, each time there was the self-immolation and someone, the news comes out, there was a candlelight vigil in the evening. Everywhere, all the schools, all the community, where Tibetans all over the world, the candlelight vigil, and they were all saying they are martyrs, they are the heroes, they are the patriots, and we must salute them. So it was very emotional, and understandably, the sacrifices made by Tibetans inside Tibet were, welcomed and appreciated and applauded by Tibetans. Now I was under pressure. now to make a call, to make a policy statement on this. So I had to think a lot, because every morning you get up and you get this bio of a young boy or a monk or a nun or a woman burned, himself, herself, and then one or two every day. And then now how do you respond to this? And as a human being, I felt, I can't say, burn yourself. I just could not come to saying that. But if I said don't do it, how would Tibetan inside Tibet react? Especially those who committed self-immolation and their family members. They might say, we sacrifice for our cause, and who are you to say don't do it? So it was very heart-wrenching. And then some, 136 died, but then some were alive. So they committed self-immolation, some were alive. How would they react? That I don't even appreciate, not just not appreciate, say don't do it. I mean, that will look very negatively. So, as a leader, when you are faced with crisis, how do you respond? So it was very heart-wrenching for me. I had to think deep down. And then the March of 2012, we had a parliament session. Everybody was saying, yes, they are the martyrs, they are the heroes. And, Executive Sikyong, the political leader, now should say something, should lead us on this. And I said, I expressed my solidarity. Then I went to Japan in April of 2012, and the media were there. They asked me, what is your take on this? And I said, as a human being, life is precious. One should live and continue to fight. So one should not burn oneself. But as a Buddhist, anyone who dies, I'll pray for them. But as a Tibetan, I understand your aspirations. Your aspirations are, you want to see the return of His Holiness Dalai Lama to Tibet and freedom for Tibetans. I support that. That is my aspiration too. So as a human being, please don't do it. But as a Tibetan, I support your aspirations. So that's how I formulated my stand. And I just hoped that Tibetans will understand. But then you get criticized. And the criticism came from all sides and saying, who are you to say don't do it? And they're doing voluntarily, right? At least you can do is just keep quiet, if nothing else. And why they're committing self-immolation? The genesis of self-immolation is because, number one, inside Tibet, when you protest, you get arrested, you get imprisoned, you get tortured, and often you die in prison. Even if you're released, you get released in poor health, that it affects your family. And often the imprisonment system was such that you get arrested and you are imprisoned in faraway places. So the mother, when they have to, visit father, you have to visit, go 2 or 3 days. And whatever monthly savings that they have, food and clothes they take, and you don't allow you to meet with your father in prison. So when you do that over 5 years, 10 years, it bankrupts your house, and the children are neglected, and they're ostracized and legally anyway discriminated anyways, right? So they suffer a lot. Hence, the self-immolators concluded, if I burn myself and die quickly, I die quickly, and I don't have to go through suffering and torture, and my family also, they don't have to suffer. So that's why they commit self-immolation. And how can you justify by saying don't do it? So as a leader, you are faced with crisis, you have to make a judgment call. So I made that, and then there were criticisms. Obviously, then you just hope over time people will understand why I made the call. Now, what happened was self-immolation started happening in exile. In Nepal, there was a case. In Delhi, there was a case. Then a high school kid, 16-year-old kid, burned himself. Then it just spread like wildfire in all high schools. It was very heart-wrenching. I came out and say, inside Tibet, they do it because they have no option. They don't have freedom to express in any ways. In exile, you have free to protest, free to organize rallies. You can do all these things. Please don't do it. Then this family of 16-year-old boy was visiting Dharamsala with mother and siblings. Now I came to know about it. Now if I don't visit, that will be very disrespectful. But if I visit, then the media takes a photograph, it's in the front page, then other kids might take an idea and then commit self-immolation. So very difficult. So I visited in the afternoon, and when media was gone, I expressed my sympathy and I expressed my empathy and support. And then young sister looked at me and said, can I make a request? And I said, yes, what can I do? He said, I just lost my precious brother, and he was the youngest, and he's our favorite. Can you do something to remember him, to dedicate his birthday as Martyrs' Day? Now, very difficult. I could have given politicians' answer and say, well, I'll get back to you, or I'll talk to the team, But I just could not raise expectations and then to be dashed later, right? So I thought I should be honest to myself and I should be honest to them. And I told her, so many Tibetans have committed self-immolation in Tibet. If you dedicate Martyrs' Day for, every self-immolator, there'll be so many. So it's impossible. So I hope you understand, right? Even if I go back and talk to my team, if they come out and say no, I hope you understand. And obviously they were disappointed. But I had to be honest to myself. So while I was driving back, I know you always, when you make this kind of decision, you make decision with a very heavy heart. You go back and thinking, I hope they understand at a human level, They criticize you, it's okay. But I hope they understand that I made the right call. So, I'm sure there are many in this room who want to become leader. So you must understand that leader equals crisis and criticism, right? So you must have element of compassion and courage to decide. So that's what happened. Now, you can clearly see Tibetans are very emotional, candlelight vigils everywhere. And I wrote an op-ed piece in Washington Post to make it clear to Washington, D.C. and the rest of the world that Tibetan leadership in exile does not encourage self-immolation or protest inside Tibet, right? Now, so with all this situation happening inside Tibet, very sad cases, I thought I should come to Washington, D.C. and inform Washington, D.C., influence them, and to make a call, to make a decision in our favor. Now, when I came to Washington, D.C., the State Department won't allow me to enter the State Department. White House won't allow me to enter White House because they say you are Prime Minister of government exile. And as per protocol, that's like 1970s, Nixon-Kissinger legacy to ban exile government, right? So they don't allow you in. So I came to Washington, D.C. over 10 years, 2 or 3 times a day. Can you even 20, 30 times to Washington, D.C.? They say, no, we can't allow you in. So where do we meet? Cafeteria, coffee house, Starbucks. Very noisy Starbucks. At one time, this State Department staff was so disorganized that, he met me at the reception of a hotel. Like the people checking in and out, and there we were just talking, And it was winter. It was cold. Wind was blowing in and out, and there we met. And so plausible deniability was what was needed. And then, yes, I just could not enter the State Department, White House for 10 years. And I actually, when I got elected in summer of 2011, I had this wish list. What will I do in 10 years? Enter the State Department, enter White House, pass a law on Tibet, make it law in America to support Tibet. So that was the goal. Now, every year I come disappointed, They don't allow me in. So I met many of them outside. But the Congress was very nice. So my main host, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she visited Dharamsala too. This is a picture when she visited Dharamsala. Her trip to Taiwan was very, very much covered by news media. But she kindly visited Dharamsala, and you can clearly see I've met her many, many times. Very kind, very supportive, hard rock on the issue of Tibet. And my main host in Washington, D.C. was late Senator John McCain and Senator Joe Lieberman, Speaker Boehner, and Senate Majority Leader, late Senate Majority Leader from Nevada. And then I have many photographs of senators and congressmen. I don't want to show all the photographs. Some even Harvard graduate, because you will be quite, disturbed by the image, And Yale graduates I met. They're very nice in supporting Tibet, okay? But it was not just Washington, D.C. Even Europe, Norway. This is a photograph of Norway, our foreign ministry, I think. The foreign minister of Norway refused the support from 2013 to 2016. They used to give $100,000 for some medicine for old people. They want to cut it. And I said, it's $100,000. You have like $1 trillion, sovereign fund. Why do you want to do that? This guy was insisting. Instruction was cancel everything. Don't entertain His Holiness Dalai Lama to Norway. And of course, don't meet with me at all. Later, I found out that he has some advisory role as part of an international group of the China State Council. And you know where he is now? That he went on to become the president of World Economic Forum, Davos. And first guest he invited was President Xi Jinping in 2017, right? So the other one is the Foreign Ministry of Australia. Now, Foreign Minister of Australia, Bob Carr, came out in the news. Oh, Lobsang Sangye, I'm not meeting him at all. And then, he doesn't want to meet with me. And then later he established a research institute, again, very pro-China. But karma has it that when I was entering the Australian Parliament, elevator door opened. Who walked in? Foreign Minister of Australia. And I got introduced by the MP. He said, hey, this is Sikyong Lobsang Sangye, and this is Foreign Minister of Australia, Bob Carr. And I said, hi. So we had karmic meeting, no formal meeting, So you can't skip karma also, another teaching of Buddhism, right, James? Yes. But parliamentarians meet with you. So this Minister Wade, he was Minister of Indigenous People in Australia. He was very bold, and we had this Thank You Australia event. He had taken an oath or pledge that whenever it comes to His Holiness Dalai Lama, I will come out and support him no matter what. So he was a minister. He had to seek permission from Prime Minister. He said, look, this is my personal pledge to him. So I'm going to this event anyways. But the Foreign Ministry of Australia would not meet with me. But the parliamentarians would. So these are the parliamentarians, former speakers, and all that. So this is Australia's National Press Club. I spoke for an hour. It was broadcast live on Australian Broadcasting Corporation TV. New Zealand, no one in the Foreign Ministry or Prime Minister office, even though we had famous Prime Minister who just resigned, very open, left-oriented, doesn't meet with Tibetans. But members of Parliament would meet, and I gave talks in New Zealand. At public level, I could give talks. And this is in Israel. I was invited as a keynote speaker. And this is at the public in Israel, but both the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority refused to meet with me. As a matter of principle and based on history, they should be supporting, but didn't. And then, because this Asia Center, I'm trying to focus more on Asia. So Japan, Shinzo Abe-san, he was very kind. He was my main host, actually. So, I visited, as I said, in April of 2012. Of 4 or 5 public events, he came to 3 or 4 of them. He was my main host. Here I was speaking at the Parliament Building number 1, and Shinzo Abe-san is here, and Madam Sakurai, a very influential figure in Japan, always hosted me. And this is recently, actually. Now, Japan has the largest Tibet support parliamentary group. 100 members have joined. All the parties, except for Communist Party of Japan, have joined. And the majority are from the ruling party. And India, you can clearly see, I can go travel, give speeches. There's like 20,000 students. I have to show you all the good ones. And this is a Thank You India event in Dharamsala where, Culture Minister, Cabinet Minister of the, the federal government came, and the senior BJP leader Ram Madhav came, and the former chief minister or the governor of Himachal and the minister all came. So, we have a free, interaction with cabinet ministers in India, very supportive. And he was the speaker of the parliament. Now he's the vice president of India. So you can clearly see they didn't mind. Now I went to, not only I was not met in the executive buildings, in some places I could barely give a talk. This is in South Africa. I went and the South Africa Chinese embassy issued a press release criticizing my visit to South Africa. I was giving a talk at the Stellenbosch Law School. It's a private law school. But then 100 migrants, which the embassy hired and gave them, fries and burgers, and then They came to protest. They stormed the campus, they stormed the auditorium, and they went on stage. And then the next day, they issued a press release saying there was a massive protest against my visit. Here it is, protesting, stop splitting Tibet from China. And then after I had to give a talk in an alternate room, when I was coming out of the gate, there were like 30 or 40 Chinese people protesting, As the door opened, I could clearly see they all were taking pictures. So I said, hey, I should not get wrong footage here, I gave them victory sign and smile, So all the photographs had me with V sign with a smile, okay? They didn't have a Tibetan guy dodging and running away. So leadership, you have to make split decisions sometimes, okay? Be prepared. So University of Toronto, 50, 60 Chinese students came to protest my visit. And after I gave the talk, and some Tibetan students for Free Tibet were very riled up, like, these people are protesting, we should do something. No, don't do anything. I said, why don't you invite some of them in, after I finished my talk. Doing Q&A, they are free to ask any questions. And that I was trained here at Asia Center and Fairbank, at the East Asian Legal Studies. So I think 13, 14 of them came and started asking questions. Then we engaged. And there's a YouTube video where one guy was applauding to my answers, And one guy got up and said, no, from what I hear, I want to have a weekly discussion, with Tibetans and Chinese, come to better understanding of the situation. I said, exactly, that's what we want. Protesting outside and me talking inside in isolation doesn't help. We should come, meet, discuss, and come to understanding. So that was the progress. Then, I was campaigning in CNN, Hard Talk, supposed to be a very difficult one, BBC, I appeared in all that, and media. And finally, after 10 years of being a nomad, wandering around from hilltop to hilltop, where I was rejected by everybody, I entered the State Department, So it was COVID time, and we forgot to take our masks. It was right here. I said, we must show our face with the flags at the backdrop. We took the photograph, and there it is. History was made. Mainly because Robert Destro was appointed the special coordinator on Tibetan issues. And he was joint secretary level. So normally special coordinator on Tibetan issues are of undersecretary level. So over 10 years, each time I came, I used to meet State Department people. I said, why can't I come in? They said, no, you are a government exile. As a Syrian government exile, just walked in to the 7th floor, met Hillary Clinton. They just formed 2 months ago. They're able to go in. Why can't I go? We've been waiting for 50 years, Next time when I came, no, you can't come. You just allowed the Venezuelan government exile. Why can't I do it? I used to give them a lot of guilt trip. That's a Buddhist way, I was not nasty per se. But the inter-agency, they started discussing, debating among themselves. This is so bad, Why can't we allow Lobsang Sangye in, So one agency, 2, 3, 7 to 9 had to debate among themselves. But I knew by 2019, 8 of them had signed off. They said, okay, except for one. I should not name it, They are quite, not only at Harvard, they're also strong at the State Department. You got it, right, James? Right? Okay. So he got, as joint secretary, he said, and then he sends me a message, he wants to meet with me because he had only 4 months term left. He wants to meet with me. I said, okay, I'll come if I can meet you inside. This is COVID time. Why should I risk my life to come all the way to Washington, D.C. when I cannot come inside the State Department? He said, okay, come in. That's it. One bureaucrat made the call, and I entered the State Department, and Nixon-Kissinger legacy went down the road, and then I walked in, right? And obviously, Chinese government was very unhappy, and Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson called me an anti-China separatist. China firmly opposes Lobsang Sangye conducting anti-China separatist activities in whatever capacity, name, or country. So in fact, the spokesperson in Chinese said Lobsang Sangye has done nothing good for Tibet in his entire life. So that's my kind of achievement in life. So Harvard degree is, I've done nothing good. Harvard degree included, I think. So there it is. And then we also entered the White House. So Ngudrup Seringla was the representative of His Holiness Dalai Lama to Tibet. And there we were, posing, making sure it's recorded, without face mask. And it was covered in news media. And someone criticized by saying, oh, this Hail Mary pass, and Lobsang Sangye should have waited for the next administration to come. Then I could meet with the enter the White House during Biden's administration. I waited 10 years, right? That was enough for me. I had a few months term left. So if you have patience, if you have persistence, you can make things happen. And then finally, I said, okay, entering the State Department is good, White House is good, but we need something solid. We need a law. Make American government support you. So finally, we passed Tibetan Policy Support Act 2020. I didn't tell them, okay, James, so they're doing voluntarily, yeah. So this law is very important. We had a Tibetan Policy Act in 2002, which is amended, improved upon everything we wanted. We put it in there. And I made sure there was a provision which says that Sikyong office is legit, right? Tibetan administration is legit, so it's law now, right? Now my successor can enter the State Department because it's a law. And then one of the main provisions of the law is on reincarnation, because the Chinese government was very unhappy because the law, Tibetan Policy Support Act, said that on reincarnation of Dalai Lama, Chinese government cannot interfere. If any official interferes, he or she will be sanctioned. So now reincarnation is a major issue. In 2011, September, His Holiness had issued a statement saying, they asked for the reincarnation of 15 Dalai Lama. One could come either through reincarnation, emanation, means one could designate his own successor, a teenager boy, most likely boy or girl, or selection, like cardinals meeting and selecting the Pope. All the High Lamas can meet and select next Dalai Lama. So this is on the table, and His Holiness is, has said he will make the decision and announcement at the age of 90. So a little more than 2 years, in July of 2025, His Holiness is supposed to issue a statement on this. So this is a very sensitive, delicate issue, because historically, each time one Dalai Lama passes away, before the next one is born and teenager and enthroned, that period is very vulnerable for us. So it's very important, and this is much been discussed, but now we finally managed to include it in the law. And then, that law was passed. I mean, there's a lawmaking process, long story, but I'll shorten it. The House, Speaker Pelosi and Jimmy Garvin, they were very supportive. So they, said we can get it done. So they passed it very quickly, but it took us 18 months to pass in the Senate. Now, why? Because if you want to move anything, chair of the committee, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has almost veto power on any law to pass from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So the chair and co-chair relationship is very important. So this is very delicate. I will not dwell into it. But over 18 months, we lobbied a lot. And finally, we managed to pass the law. And that, the chair was Senator Risch, who played an instrumental role. And Senator Rubio and Congressman Jim McGovern from Amherst, Massachusetts. They were the co-sponsors of the Tibetan Policy Support Act. So we owe them a great deal for passing the law. Now, in that law, another important aspect of Tibet is included is the geopolitical aspect of Tibet, how important Tibet is. Now, look at this is, the Himalayas, Tibet plateau. This is from... you can see Tibet as the mountain. And then, because this was said in 1950s and 60s by Chinese leadership, Tibet is the palm we have to occupy, then go up to 5 fingers, right? Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, and Arunachal. So this was stated way back in 50s and 60s in Peking radio. So Tibetans are heard over and over again. So in 50s and 60s when Tibet was invaded, we also made an appeal at that time to government of India. I said, hey, if Tibet is occupied, India has to pay a heavy price. If you save us now, it will help you. It didn't happen. Now, what's happening is that this is what's happening now. China controls that part of Kashmir and claims all these yellow dots. And Arunachal Pradesh is a province in India. It's called South Tibet, by China's claim. And these are the 3 western sector, central sector, and eastern sector are 3 friction points. So there's we all read about Taiwan, potential conflicts in Taiwan, but not much is read about India-China conflicts, but this is becoming very serious. For example, in 2017, in the central sector, in Doklam area, Chinese incursion took place, quote unquote, from Indian side in the Bhutanese area, and they have built up helipad and whole military base camp. And India was nervous, and India sent around 20,000+ troops, and they were like facing each other, right? And finally, they moved back maybe 100 or so meters away, but still 20,000-30,000 troops from both sides are facing each other. Now, worse happened here in the western sector, in Galwan Valley in Ladakh. At night, hundreds of Chinese troops cross river and attack Indian troops with rods and sticks and stones, and killed, I think, more than a dozen of them and injured 100 of them. It became a sensational news in India, all over India. This is like an insult to us, killing our people and injuring our people. So again, 50,000 Chinese troops moved in, 50,000 Indian troops moved in. Now, at the moment in Ladakh, it's like minus 10, 20 degrees Celsius, okay? It's very cold. Now, 50,000 troops are facing each other. And then recently in Arunachal, similar inroads were made by Chinese troops. But, the Indian troops had the upper hand. They were on top of a hill. So they managed to push back because Indians had long lathis, So the small rods didn't help. So they pushed back. So conflicts are going on. Border incursions, from 100 a year to 200 to 500 a year is happening. So again, if there is a conflict with India and China, why Tibet is important? Because there was never a land border between India and China. It was always Tibet. Tibet as the buffer prevented these largest populated countries from facing each other. Now they're facing each other because Tibet is occupied. So Tibet becomes very relevant. And now in India, Tibet issue is becoming important. Indian troops are told to learn Tibetan language, because if you learn Ni Hao, it doesn't help you, because when you cross the mountain, you meet Tibetans, you don't meet Chinese on the other side. So they're learning Tibetan language and Tibetan history, Tibetan culture. So Tibet is very, very important. Now, recently, I just watched an Indian blogger taking out, bloggers from China. They're distributing these maps in China, claiming all these areas as Chinese areas. Look, Kashmir, whole of Arunachal, all this territory. This map is more scary. Look, all this territory is part of China. So Chinese bloggers are saying all these territories are part of China, and Indian bloggers are saying, look, this is what China is claiming, so this is more dangerous, we should be prepared. So hence there's a heightened tension in India and China, and Tibet is in the middle of it. So that's why Tibet is very important. Another reason Tibet is so important is, at one time, Indian leaders used to say, nothing grows in Tibet. Even a grass won't grow. But now a lot of things grow in Tibet. Look, copper, gold, iron, lithium, 70% of lithium in Tibet, in China, is in Tibet, right? Second largest copper mine in China is in Tibet, in Zomda area. So you just name it, 130-some minerals of hundreds of billions of dollars worth of minerals are in Tibet. And then the Chinese government and Chinese companies are not only to be blamed. Canadians are also very busy mining Tibetan minerals as well. So again, from mineral point of view, now mineral scarcity in the raw materials is very important. Tibet has plenty of minerals in Tibet. So that's why Tibet is called Xizang, means Western treasure. It is a land of treasure. Now, third reason why Tibet is very important is because Tibet is the water tower of Asia. Now, we all talk about Antarctica and Arctic as, yes, the highest and the second highest or the largest snow is there in Antarctica and Arctic. But when they melt, it goes to ocean. But when the Tibetan the glaciers melt, it forms streams, it forms tributaries, it forms rivers, and becomes a source of fresh water for 1.4 billion people, right, in the whole of Asia. So in that context, as far as the fresh water is concerned, Tibet is more important than Antarctic and Arctic. Now, conveniently, Chinese government has not signed the UN Convention on Water Sharing. And Asia, by 2050, the population in the world is supposed to be 10 billion, right? Of which 5.26 billion will be in Asia, of which 60% will be in urban areas, meaning they need more water, more energy, more food. So water is vital in Asia, and Tibet is the source of all the rivers. You can see Yellow River and Yangtze River, cradle of Chinese civilization, right? Starts from Tibet. Mekong, Salween, Irrawaddy, whole of in ASEAN countries. Brahmaputra River for Bangladesh and northeast of India. For Indus, Satluj, all flow from Tibet. So Tibet is vital as far as water is concerned. And then, you can name just any of the UN Secretary General, Boutros Ghali, Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, all have said there is a potential for conflict over water. Water is very important. World Economic Forum came out with a report in 2015 listing potential crisis. And number one crisis was water. Right? So Tibet has plenty of water. As a Buddhist, we've been sharing our water with all our neighbors without charging. Now we all pay, to buy water, right? Had we charged, we would have been like Norway, actually, and quite rich. So Yangtze River is drying up. Look at this, in the drought in China. So even Chinese environmentalists are calling to declare Tibet as a national reserve. Protect Tibetan Plateau, not for Tibetan sake, but for our sake. This is where our water comes from. The roof of the world determines our climate, our weather. So Chinese environmentalists have appealed to the Chinese government as well. Unfortunately, the glaciers of Tibet are melting so fast. Look, this is all snow. Now, 1921, 2009 has disappeared completely. This all snow, 1933, 2006, all disappeared. By 2030, in 7 years' time, the snow or glaciers over Tibetan mountain will be less than, the melting of glaciers. So the restoration of snow will be less than, so it's the turning point. So more snow will melt and more snow will fall on Tibetan plateaus. So this will lead to a crisis in Asia, and Asia is going to have the largest population in the whole world. So you can clearly see why Tibet is so important. Now, so I think I made my case how I ran as an election, went around, finally managed to enter the State Department, White House, passed the law. Now it's a law in America to support Tibet. And Tibet issue is very, very important from geopolitical, geographical point of view. But today, speech, this honor is very special for me. And for me, it's a tribute to Harvard, because Harvard transformed my life, made me who I am. So this high lecture, it's a great honor and privilege. It's, in a way, it's a statement of Harvard University. The refugee boy could come here, and Professor Alford will take me under his wings, and whatever he saw in me, I don't know. He said, when I was doing my LLM, he said, why don't you do HJD? I never applied for scholarship. He gave me scholarship. I finished my doctorate dissertation, and then he said, well, you continue to work here. And then finally, when I had to run for positions, all my professors and Professor Alford said, yeah, you can do it. It was I took the toughest job without realizing that I could actually do it. Now recently I've just come back, and Professor Alford told me to teach. I said, maybe, I don't know whether I can teach or not, But I said, teaching, it went quite well at law school and the candidate school. Students themselves, made an appeal to the program, and I'm teaching a reading group as well. So it's like a whole circle, that as a student I came back, and today I'm standing here. So I hope I passed my test, and Charlie and Janet, Joe, so many of my old friends, professors are here, all my friends are here. I'm extremely grateful, and some of the professors who I know, like late Professor Israel Bogul, Mark Farquhar, they have left this world, but they were very, very supportive, in track 3 diplomacy. Liz Perry is not here. Bill Kirby, I already mentioned. So many of them helped shape my career. And then there's so many Tibetans have come, and many of them are supporters. They've been with me for all these years, and to all of them, I just want to say thank you, Tuji Chenang. Also, there are 6 million Tibetans in Tibet are still and suffering. And even though I left my office, when I applied at Harvard Law School, at the end, I wrote, "I'm born a freedom fighter, I'll die a freedom fighter." So that pledge still remains. So I will be part of the Tibetan movement for a long time to come. And my friend is also here. So with that note, I just want to say thank you, Tujiche.
We can go over here and take some questions. So we do have some time. We can open up the floor to some questions. There'll be some microphones that will go around, so please make sure that you have a microphone before you ask your question, otherwise we can't hear it. And please make sure that your question is actually a question as well. We won't have a lot of time, and so we'll make sure that we have a question that comes from you rather than just a long statement, okay?
Before I forget, my old friend John and Ann are there. My landlord, Larry, is here, with Henry Steiner, and obviously my wife and daughter, I must mention all of them.
Yes,
right
of
now,
course.
Yes. And my brother is here, yes. My family members, my mother is back home, all my friends. Thank you so much, yes.
So the floor is open. I think we, first hand there.
Hello, thank you for this inspiring talk. I'm from Venezuela, and we have almost 20% of the population also now in the diaspora and outside of our country. So, seeing your experience, I wanted to ask you, how do you do, or Tibetans do in general, to keep the attention and the engage of the Tibetan people outside with an exile government? How do you make them also even being able to pay a tax for freedom? That's very important, and I think that the Tibetan community in the diaspora is a very engaged community that even from the years that you are in exile, keep in touch with their home.
Yes. Thank you very much. Recently, I was in Miami. I met a couple of community leaders of Venezuela and Cuban leaders as well. So my recommendation to all those who are in exile, whether you're Venezuelan or Cuban or Afghan or Syrian, form government exile, right? Now you don't have to be like Tibetan government exile with all this administration, but at least you can have a parliament where you can meet once or twice every year, where all the stakeholders can come and share your experience and vent and criticize each other, but there will be a center where everybody will come to agree, and that center will be an alternative to the Maduro's regime in Venezuela. So I know there are 7 million Venezuelans outside, and I think 600,000 only in Florida. So you are much bigger in number than us. So you can definitely form a government exile. So I can be your consultant. Because I have an expertise in how to run a government exile. Actually, I wrote my dissertation under Professor Alfred and the Professor Vanderkuyp and Henry Steiner on democracy in exile, how democracy in exile can function. So when I write that book, I think hopefully Venezuelans will read. My recommendation: form government exile. Otherwise, when you are scattered all over the world, and then after some time, it's easy to get disillusioned. It's easy to get cynical and easy to fight among yourself. But if you have a government exile, all the different views and criticisms you have, you come to a center, to the parliament. Then you talk to each other. You might disagree vehemently. You criticize each other vehemently. It doesn't matter. But you always come to the center. And as an exile movement, on the one hand, our job is easy. All you need to do is survive. On the other side has to remain powerful and get more power, because you have to sustain. And then it's just a cycle of life, right? If you look at any great power, they come and go. So you just have to survive and you will succeed.
Next question. How about, actually, we'll go first there and then to you over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the talk. It was really interesting. My name is Hongmin An from the Divinity School from Korea. So my question is about the identity, as a Tibetan identity, right? So exile government, obviously, in some ways, the Tibetan groups are uprooted from their like root in China. And, just the nature of the law that once the tree is uprooted from its root, naturally it will wither. The tree will wither over time. So what can you do to like this maintain or preserve this heritage over time when this, in a way, is an uphill battle, that time is against you?
Well, there are many, communities in exile. The Jewish people for thousands of years, were in exile. But then within the Jewish community, if you study, there are like liberal, conservative, orthodox groups, right? All play their roles. So similarly, in Tibetan community, we try to have, for example, Tibetans in Boston, we have Sunday school, and where Tibetan language, Tibetan dance, Tibetan music, Tibetan religion and spirituality is also taught, right? So, and that's how we preserve. And then the Tibetan government exile, what we do is we publish, the curriculum. Now, in Tibetan schools in India, this curriculum is for Tibetan history, Tibetan language and culture. But for Tibetans in diaspora, it's like Tibetan language curriculum for how to speak, how to read, and how to write. So Tibetan as a second language. So that's how you have to keep your Tibetan community or exile community well knit, coordinated. So we have Tibetan Association in Boston, which functions very well. Again, I think the request is made not to make video of this talk, right?
Yeah. Down here first, if there's a microphone, yeah.
Thank you for the very inspirational talk. My name is Rie, and I'm from Tokyo, Japan. I have two questions, and the first one is, what motivated you to take part in the Tibetan government, like apart from the supports and recommendation you received from the professor at Harvard? And the second question is, like, what would you see as the future of Tibet, or what would you want to see? And what would you expect the international community to do to help that? Thank you.
As far as motivation is concerned, philosophically, as a Buddhist, we look at life differently. Maybe, James, I'm trying to promote Buddhism here.
Okay, good.
So, in Western culture, birthdays are very important. Right? But for Buddhists, we are told you are born and you are bound to die. So birth and death are two sides of the same coin. So we are told you are going to die, eventually. You can't escape. It's inevitable. Now you are going to die anyways, so what do you do while you live? So now motivation is very clear. Okay, I want to do something, that I can leave something behind. And immediately it will be your family, your community, your cause, So as a Tibetan, I have a clear-cut choice here for Tibetan cause and Tibetan movement, So that's the motivation. And another one is, as a Tibetan, I have no choice but to contribute towards Tibetan cause, right? Because our civilization, our nation is at stake, and Tibetans in Tibet are suffering. And I have the privilege of being in a free country with education and exposure. And then, motivation is very clear. I should use this for a cause. So that's why. And then, for all the millennials, maybe you are a bit selfish and all that, right? But you are getting the worst deal because climate change is going to be real. With Ukraine war, you can clearly see conflicts will increase. And if you're from Asia, Korea, more conflicts are likely to happen, as I showed you, right? So these are the reality of the whole world. Now, but at the same time, what kind of world do you want, right? So there was First World War, League of Nations was formed. Second World War, United Nations was formed. Now United Nations is clearly ineffective in preventing war in Ukraine, and so let's say in Taiwan also, right? So what kind of international body you want to have? So you have a clean slate. It's a challenge, but an opportunity as well. So as a Tibetan, I look at it that way. Perhaps my position was the toughest job in the world. You saw me wandering around like a nomad. No one wants to meet with me. They see me as a nuisance. They want to do business with China, right? But You don't give up. You just keep knocking, and that's life, you know. And ultimately, you succeed. You pass a law, you make an entrance and all that. And then it's worth it. At least when I look back in my life, you know, I wrote in that Harvard application also, I want to die without regrets as a freedom fighter. I will have less regrets because I have served my cause, right? So, great opportunities for you all.
Maybe we'll take a question from the left side.
Hello.
Oh.
My name is Diego Osorio.
Yes, we got one.
I'm not here on behalf of the Canadian government, but I work in Canada for the Canadian government. I just want to say that I really pay attention to your mentioning of the fact that there are Canadian companies doing mining in certain places. And I just want to put it out there that if there is a time to do proper lobbying in Canada regarding this issue with Chinese and Canadian interests in mining, the time is now. So don't let that pass. And the second element is that we have legislation that allows you to bring those companies to court in Canadian jurisdictions in case there was real violations of human rights. So it's just a suggestion. I have to go, but good luck on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending your precious Canadian time.
Yes. Yeah. Venerable Ifa, yeah.
Okay. Ifa from Asia Center. I'm a Buddhist nun from Taiwan, not from mainland China, so no offense. Okay. About the reincarnation, even though that the Congress, passed a law, but, personally, I don't think that, that can prevent the Chinese government to challenge this law. I'm wondering if His Holiness ever consider to abolish this reincarnation practice. The first one, this practice, this reincarnation of a living Buddha is not, practiced during the time of the Buddha or even passed on. It was later, 13th century. And especially this selection system was, kind of enforced during the Qing dynasty. And right now it's the 21st century. Why His Holiness, consider just abolished? Because this, involved with politics, I think is going to, create more chaos for Buddhism in the world. And especially, probably not just with China. I know in the future it could be a Taiwan and more country like a claim that His Holiness will be reincarnated in this whole country. So then we're going to have a probably world war of Dalai Lama's reincarnation. This is just joking. Okay, yeah.
I don't think there will be a war per se. Now, as for your argument that reincarnation was invented later in 13th century, not during Buddha's time, a lot of things were invented in all religion, a later time. I think the Bible was, written 300 years after Jesus left the world. Similar with Islam, even Buddhism also, right? Most of the texts came 300 years later after Buddha left, But then each, community invent what is suitable for them. Now, as far as reincarnation is concerned, Tibetans believe it, and it's suitable for us. And as far as Tibetans are concerned, we want to preserve the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. And I think in October and November of 2019, Tibetan community leaders from all over the world made an appeal to His Holiness Dalai Lama that he should be reborn. Because in 1967, he made it very clear that as far as his reincarnation is concerned, it is for the Tibetan people to decide. It's not like he wanted to come, right? He said it's for the Tibetan people to decide. Now, reincarnation means reincarnation. It is the choice of followers to have the reincarnation or not. If followers don't want it, no one will search for him and there won't be reincarnation. But Tibetan people wanted it and they want it. They will search for 15th Dalai Lama and they will have it. Now, as far as Chinese government is concerned, yes, they will select their own Dalai Lama. But now you have to weigh the differences between the two. Chinese government, Mao Zedong told His Holiness Dalai Lama that religion is poison, right? That's their credibility, okay? 98% of monasteries and nunneries were destroyed. 99% of monks and nuns were disrobed. 90+% of Tibetan artifacts, okay, statues, gold, silver were melted, and even copper, iron were melted and made into utensils, right? So they had utter disrespect for anything that is Buddhism and religion, right? And photograph of Dalai Lama is banned in Tibet now. So what credibility does Chinese government or the Communist Party of China has in selecting the next Dalai Lama? None, right? So if they select one, who will believe? No one, except the ones who are forced to believe, right? So they are an atheist organization. They don't believe in religion. And why they want to select a religious leader? And Dalai Lama himself, His Holiness, said jokingly, well, if Communist Party of China, if you want to take it very seriously as far as searching for my reincarnation, why don't you first find the reincarnation of Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and Chu Te? Set some credibility, right? Then you can say, well, we have expertise in searching for reincarnation of Communist Party leaders, hence we have expertise in selecting the spiritual leaders, right? So they have zero credibility. So as far as Tibetans are concerned, it's pretty clear that our Dalai Lama, one, directed by His Holiness Dalai Lama, will be the real one. So as far as, Charlie said, you're a believer or non-believer. You believe in your reincarnation. If you don't believe, then that's your problem. So as far as Tibetans are concerned, it's pretty clear for us. Sorry, it won't be abolished, okay?
But it is interesting, the concept you raised of a possible emanation decision that may come in 2025, right? Do you think that's a viable one that His Holiness might entertain? I mean, because one of the problems of the Dalai Lama system, right, is the gap of a regency or an open period, which you mentioned in your talk is it can be a fraught time. It always has been in Tibetan history of that gap of raising the next Dalai Lama. So this emanation seems to help deal with that problem of the gap of raising a child. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, or if you have any sense of if that's
James,
being entertained seriously.
Yeah, you're entering a very sensitive area.
Okay, you don't have to.
Why I said
as
this,
if nothing else has been sensitive.
Yeah, that's true. But why I said this is, I came out in 2008.
Yeah.
Calling for emanation of the Dalai Lama's reincarnation. So I'm on the record. I nearly lost election in 2011 because some of the elderly Tibetans were saying like, he is very much healthy, Why are you talking about his death and reincarnation? Some Tibetan women were cursing me or scolding me for doing that. But I'm on the record. Emanation is the best solution. Now, on paper, so in administration, sometimes the project on paper looks very good. But in reality, how do you go about doing it? Because the risk is, if the emanation candidate doesn't pan out, doesn't work out, then the 16th Dalai Lama will not work out because the emanation has to continue with emanation, right? So that's the danger. With reincarnation, we might get, okay, kind of a Dalai Lama for one. When he dies, next one is reborn. It's brand new, right? With emanation, that risk is there. So who do you select? Lot is at stake here.
Big pressure. Yeah. Yes. There was another hand up in the back here first.
Yeah.
Did you have your hand as well? Okay, we'll get to you next. Yeah, there. And then I think I saw.
Yes.
Okay.
That hand, yeah.
Sure, we'll get to all of you, don't worry. Yeah. The food can hold for a bit.
So, Your Honor, thank you very much for your talk. I'm very moved. I would like to ask for some advice. So I'm just a humble and regular student who came from mainland China. So very similar to what you said. So as a human being, so I'm very compassionate toward all the human beings, especially my brothers and sisters, if I can use that word. So even for those who are in exile, I have strong compassion toward them. But also, I mean, as a Chinese, I have a strong love to my own country, and I'm grateful to my own country. So I'm not a protester. I'm not a protester. So I do want to listen to you. So I would like to have some advice. So how should I approach? Or maybe how should the students like me approach this kind of stories, issues, and what should we do for the future?
That's very kind of you to say that, and very bold of you too, you know. Now, right here at Harvard, when I was here 16 years ago, we started the same way between Chinese students and Tibetan students. We had started conversation. After some time, Chinese Student Association and Tibetan Student Association had formal weekly conversation. Then we, went up and said, why not we have track 3 diplomacy? And Fairbanks Center, Asia Center, Yanqing all supported. And so, we used to invite Chinese scholars and high-ranking officials from China, from exile, and Western scholars and Indian scholars right here. So we used to have around 15 or 20 people in one room for 2 or 3 days. But so who is who of Harvard? Professor Israel Vogel, Mark Farquhar, they used to chair. There are only 15 people in one room, right? They used to lend their name and support, Professor Alfred also. So you can do great things at Harvard, But I must caution you, and it's a bit risky nowadays, okay? So I personally, I just feel, I wish, we could do that. So we have Tinza Dara here. She's a student here, Tibetan student. You can meet with her, and then have conversation. Understanding is key. So that's why when Deng Xiaoping said, other than independence, anything can be discussed, His Holiness took it very seriously. He said, okay, we will not seek independence if you give us genuine autonomy within the Constitution of China and within China. That's as reasonable as one can get. Because Chinese government always says, sovereignty and territorial integrity cannot be compromised. He said, okay, we get that. Now why don't you give us genuine autonomy as written in the Chinese Constitution? And unfortunately, that document, Memorandum of Genuine Autonomy, was not taken seriously by, Chinese government. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Great. We're going to try to take 3 more questions here in the back first, and then here, and then over here.
Thank you. Great talk. I'm a Chinese visiting scholar at Harvard. I have a question because I grew up and educated in China, and from the main, when I went through all the education and all the medias, it sounds like Tibetan people and Xinjiang people are suspicious. There are so many anti-Chinese, anti-China separatists. So because 90% of Chinese people are Han population, so throughout all our education, we hear a different story. So I really want to know, how do you get your voice heard by the majority of Chinese people?
Yeah, first of all, I think, His Holiness Dalai Lama has made it very clear. As far as Tibetans are concerned, we are not anti-China. Okay, China was a great country, a great civilization, or Chinese people, right? Yesterday only I had Chinese food, mafu tofu, okay, double kupo. Okay, so we have nothing against Chinese people. Our differences is with the Chinese government policies. These hardline policies where Tibetans are denied their religious freedom, their linguistic freedom, their administration, right? Where, Han Chinese, officials are the most powerful officials in Tibet. For example, the Party Secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region has never been a Tibetan, has always been Han Chinese, right? So, and then all the top-ranking Chinese officials. So the way we see it is, Chinese are very suspicious of us, that they don't give us even an administrative power in Tibet, right? In Tibet University, now in Minzu Daxue, minority national university, Minzu departments are abolished now, right? So you say there are no Minzus now, so all these things are happening, and then that makes us suspicious. And then I know if you have gone through Chinese education, you are told Tibetans are barbaric, backward. Tibetans are very grateful we are there, right? And then often you have watched the movie Nung Nung, yeah. And then say, wow, Tibetans are so bad. They live in caves. They are so filthy, dirty. But there was a documentary made by Communist Party of China as a propaganda. These were Tibetan actors. They were made to put charcoal on their face and come out like this from the cave, right? The Tibetans don't live in caves, okay? So this is a propaganda, and people believe that, right? And so this, I think, we all must know. And then Tibetans are, what they call, the Dalai Lama was a theocratic leader. He was so cruel. No one liked him. But Chinese government has no problem with theocratic system. They're doing business with Iran. And the theocratic leader is welcome in China, and they go shake hands and buy oil from Iran, okay? With the feudal system, autocratic system. With North Korea, they have no problem. North Korea is facing a lot of problems, but it's one of the allies. So all this propaganda are made to believe to the Chinese people at large. And they believe that. They're ignorant. And then when they first see Tibetan talking, they're like, why are you protesting? You know, we thought you all are very happy. That's what Chinese government told us, right? Then I had a very good, interesting argument. I asked a Chinese friend. I have many Chinese friends, okay? So I said, how much of, Xinhua News Agency and CCTV do you believe? They said 50-50. 50% true, 50% not true. But on Tibet, which 50% is not true and which 50% is true? On Tibet, it's 100% true. I said, how can it be possible, right? So if you read Xinhua News Agency and what they describe about Tibet, you say it's 50% is untrue. So first start with that and listen to Tibetan, then they will give you the 50% of it.
Great. We'll take 2 more questions. If we can keep them a little bit short, that'd be great just for time. Yep.
I'm a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. I'm from Hong Kong. And I think the Tibetans and the Hong Kongers have something very essential in common, which is that the one country, two system formula was supposed to be offered to the Tibetans. And you mentioned that you have been very reasonable in trying to make that work and not seek for independence. The Hong Kong people also were very reasonable in that we tried to make one country, two system work, but it didn't work, okay? And now they're trying to offer it to Taiwan or even force it on them. And I think it is a very important story that Tibetans and Hong Kongers have to tell the international community and also to explain the position of the Taiwanese people is that quote and unquote being reasonable is not going to work when you're dealing with especially the Communist Party regime that we're dealing with today that you and I are very familiar with. I just want to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
I know, Dennis, because we used to say we need genuine autonomy within the framework of the Chinese constitution. Like Hong Kong. Hong Kong had one country, two system. But also Tibet was patient zero, and Tibet was the original one country, two system. If you read 17-point agreement signed in 1951 between Chinese government and Tibet, which was forced on us, essentially all the genesis and elements of one country, two system and autonomy is there. But it's just that from 51-59, all the provisions were violated, and His Holiness was forced to flee to exile to India, right? Now, when we seek genuine autonomy dialogue, that's the argument we make. Now, the counter-argument made by Tibetan Youth Congress, the Students Free Tibet, others more, hardliners, or rather, they are, quite strong. They say, look, Hong Kong, they had one country system, it didn't work. Why are we asking for something that didn't work with Hong Kong, So that now it has kind of dented, the argument for a middle way approach in genuine autonomy. Even then, His Holiness is still sticking to his middle way approach. So that will make Chinese, people understand how difficult His Holiness Dalai Lama is in, right? Still, he's advocating some kind of win-win situation, compromise for Tibetan people.
Great. Our last question here.
Thank you. It's always great to see you speak. I'm in your study group as well. My question is a slightly zoomed out question. I think in the context of where we are in the contemporary world, there's a lot of discussion on the future of the nation state and what the next iteration of the contemporary nation state would look like. And it seems that self-determination and separatism are two sides of the same coin. In that context, what lessons would you draw or seek to give to other nations denied across the world as to nudge the envelope of the nation state to be more municipal and yet and more inclusive of different nations within a particular state? So making states more municipal, but is that the future? I mean that's also a question.
Yes, at one time we used to believe in globalization, everybody together. That recently there is this trend towards nationalism, inward looking. So we are in a different world scenario. But, there are several examples where it has worked and it is working. For example, Quebec, South Tyrol, and Scotland, Basque, even Northern Ireland, right, with Good Friday Agreement, they have limited autonomy, so it's working. So if Chinese government would like to look at models, there are many models which are working. And all these models are based on element of trust or understanding at least, that both sides come together. There will always be an pro-independence element, let's say in Quebec or in Scotland. But majority seem to agree to be in association with UK and to enjoy high degree of autonomy. So if Chinese government want, and then it's not just want, they have already promised on paper. So Tibet Autonomous Region is supposed to be autonomous. Xinjiang Autonomous Region is supposed to be autonomous, right? Problem is there is no autonomy and it's controlled by Han Chinese officials. And that has led to the problem. So similarly with Hong Kong, also one country, two system, right? Problem was the national security law was imposed on them and Han Chinese officials, came heavy-handed, and that disrupted the equilibrium that was, there, in Hong Kong. So it just, the coming to understanding, to be more mature, to be more, understanding, to be more compassionate, So that's the element is needed with the Chinese government and also with war in Ukraine everywhere. I think, generally conflicts could be avoided if there is an element of I don't want to say trust, but some element of trust or respect on each other and come to understanding through dialogue.
I think that's a perfect place to draw this to a close. Trust, respect, compassion, and dialogue lessons I think everybody can take home. Before you vigorously applaud our speaker tonight, I wanted to just present him with a very small token of our appreciation for giving the 17th Tsai lecture. We enjoyed it very much, learned a lot, and thank you very much for all the work you've been doing. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very good. Really, really excellent. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So please join us out in the concourse. There should be food and drink and ample space for people to talk and carry on the conversation. So thank you all very much for coming this afternoon. Goodbye.